most people go about their days feeling unseen, unheard, unimportant, like still working their butt off, still like trying really hard, but ultimately feeling unappreciated. And to me, I think a lot of that is solved by earning the trust of the people around you. So we're in this moment where people are just less likely to take action, to choose than ever before. That requires more trust in the person, in the process, in the company, in the whatever that you're choosing to follow.
What's happening, people? Welcome back to another powerful episode of Marketing by Design. This is the Jay Clouse episode. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of Jay Clouse. He's a local legend of some sorts. And this episode is going to be all about this idea of trust. We're going to talk about the creative undertakings he's doing in his own business, how he's thinking as he's going in and researching all the actionable things about trust that you can apply to marketing, to your content. And all in all, this is just a great, real conversation. I've been wanting to interview Jay for a really, really long time. Jay is someone that I look up to a ton, and he's been a big source of creative inspiration for me. And his ideas on trust today are something that not just I learned personally from. There's a lot of good nuggets for you in here as well. So without further ado, let's dive right on in. Appreciate you all. Welcome to the Jay Clouse episode. I think a really good sort of like maybe a springboard into this like idea that I want to talk about of, trust. Is who's someone that you trust, and maybe that can help kind of reverse engineer some of the things that you're thinking about a lot nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, first person that comes to mind is my wife. I don't think there's ever been a time where I didn't trust my wife. And interestingly, the other word that comes up for my wife is loyalty. And I think both are subjects that are practically never explored, and play really well together. But they are distinct. So yeah, I think about my wife because I trust her implicitly as it relates to me, as it relates to our daughter, as it relates to any decision in the house and the business. And yeah, it makes co-living, co-parenting, co-working, all those things easier.
Why do you think? Why did your wife come to mind first? Because I would have thought objectively, like if someone were to ask me that, I would have probably said like my mom or dad, or maybe my sister, just because they were there like from day zero, day one. Why does Mallory come to mind for you first?
Well, I mean, she's the person I spend the most time with,
Right.
and she has the most opportunities to be trustworthy or not trustworthy on like not even a day-to-day basis, but like a moment-to-moment basis, because we're literally around each other like almost every minute of every day. So when you have that much closeness with somebody, you're either constantly questioning whether you can trust them or not thinking about it at all.
Mhm.
And with her, I just don't think about it at all.
Yeah. And I mean, and I'm still kind of growing and navigating my own chapters of this. I haven't had the experience long term yet where that's been like that for someone outside of my own family. Um, is there, as you kind of go into this bigger creative project with, a book or diving more into researching this own project, is there anything that you're thinking? Um, First of all, I want to know a little about your research process as you're doing this, because I think there's a lot of net new stuff. There's not a lot of stuff about this out there. Even as I was preparing for this interview, there's not a lot of original research on conceptually trust as an idea. So I think you could be a good person to have some of your own unique viewpoints around it. But is there anything that you've just, even since you've just gotten started, that maybe has surprised you, or that you're shocked there isn't more definitive research around?
Yeah, I think the thing is, trust is a deeply human skill, deeply human concept, a deeply human experience, literally going all the way back to Homo sapiens as a species. The reason Homo sapiens outlasted Neanderthals and other like strains of human-like species is because they were able to collaborate across family lines. So most species they collaborate, but just within like kin. Um, and humans developed the ability to collaborate outside of their family, which required trust. And so they were able to outcompete different species, different human-like species, for prey and survival, and eventually spread across different continents. So we've literally been like bred and evolved to innately trust other human beings.
Hmm.
And so because of that, we have this interesting dichotomy that happens where, especially in developed countries, those societies are what there's this um, political scientist named Francis Fukuyama, I believe is his name. And his thing was there are high trust societies and low trust societies. And high trust societies became developed countries because that trust enabled them to move more quickly and outcompete low trust societies. So, sitting here today, you and I, we are wired to trust by default. And the interesting thing is, from the research, 75% of people think they are more trustworthy than the average person,
Mm-hmm.
which, like, that math doesn't math.
Yeah.
You know, like, average means most people are that, but 75% of people think they're above average. And if you look at generation after generation and their proclivity to trust by default, it's dropping decade after decade, generation after generation.
Yeah.
So we're in this moment where even though we innately have this predisposition to trust, that's slowly washing away, and we overestimate our own trustworthiness.
Why?
So
Why do you think we do?
I think it's just because literally from birth, our first instinct is, do we trust the other humans around us? Like, do we trust this parent to take care of me, take care of my needs, to change my diaper, to feed me, to make me feel comfortable, you know? Like, we've been trusting for so long that it becomes this background process. And for skills that are desirable and difficult to measure, we tend to overestimate our abilities. Whereas skills that are easy to measure and more difficult, we are more honest and may even underestimate our abilities. So, example would be like, most people who aren't like mathematicians would say, I'm below average on math. But on things like driving ability,
That's what I was just
trustworthiness,
yeah.
like, we're like, oh yeah, I'm great.
Mhm.
So the challenge in this book, I think the reason there's not a lot of great literature around this is because most people don't believe they have trust problems. And so saying, I'm going to solve your trust problems, people are like, what trust problems? That is the challenge that has kind of evolved here. But I think most problems are people problems, and most people problems are trust problems.
Mm. Yeah, that's so good. I saw that on one of your Substack notes. Um, and I think too, you are someone just like as a third party viewer. The reason a lot of people like trust you and why I think you might be someone that can really resonate with this topic as you explore it more is because you've managed to do it at a phase where a lot of people first come into contact online, like a lot of their first impressions and ideas. And I think that's contrary to what you were talking about when like evolutionary psychology. It's a newer concept, more very 21st century. And you've been able to kind of overcome that to a large audience of people like in a community to where they trust you enough to make a purchase without having ever even met you. And especially from a business standpoint, that's very, very advantageous. Um, so is there anything tangible that you've done kind of over the last, decade or so building creator science that make you trustworthy and make you qualified to speak on this?
That's that's kind of where I had to work backwards from. The reason I got really interested in this subject was there was somebody in the lab, my membership, and they had set up a very similar structure to creator science in their business. And they had a membership and it was priced similarly and the structure was similar. And they were having a hard time getting their audience to purchase. And they're like, I don't get it. Like, what am I doing differently? And I thought about it. I looked at it. I'm like, well, structurally, it's all there. But, to be honest, you've only been doing this for about 3 years and I've been doing it for 8. Like, I think I have just more built-in trust with my audience over time. He says, okay, got it. How did you do that? And I was like, that's a really good question. I actually have no idea. So I've had to work backwards and see like, well, why do we trust? Where does that come from? Because again, like to that point, I had also taken that for granted. I was like, oh yeah, I know what trust is. But when I started to interrogate, it's like, actually, I have no idea when I get down to it, what actual behaviors and actions I have done that have made me more trustworthy than other people. So I had to dig into it, and there's some research that shows this has been repeated and peer reviewed, and just like they've just shown this over and over again that the four traits that make somebody trustworthy are competency, consistency, and by consistency I really mean reliability, integrity, and empathy. And so I think when I look at those four traits, it comes down to, do your actions reinforce those traits to the people that you're speaking to? So if you embody all four of those traits, that's obviously great. But some circumstances you don't need all of those. Like if you are in an organization and you have a team member or a coworker or a boss, and you just need to trust that they are competent enough at their job to hit the deadline, you may not need to believe they're an empathetic person or a super high integrity person to trust that they will get their job done, if that's the context that trust matters.
Yeah.
But obviously, the more you do all four of those things, the better. And I think in the content world that I live in, I think I have shown the more intangible side than most. And by intangible, I mean the integrity and empathy side of things. Empathy is really, do I believe this person has my interests in mind in the way that they are operating? Or are they making mostly selfish decisions? And integrity being, does this person, when the rubber meets the road, are they willing to make decisions that are counter to their interests for the benefit of me, of society, of being in alignment with what they say they care about? And I think those are the things that I've done a little bit more and been kind of explicit about, because as I've been doing the journey, I just share what I do. And so sometimes I'll share decisions that I make that you might look at and be like, oh, wow, that's kind of a surprising choice that you made. For example, I have cut out a lot of sponsorship in my podcasts, in my content generally, because I came to decide it's not worth it to me to share someone else's message if I don't endorse it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I could have an integration to say, yeah, you can advertise in my newsletter. And for a while, I just thought that was like, yeah, they paid for it. Like, this is a sponsored message. But what I came to realize was this is at least a soft endorsement, if not a full, explicit endorsement of this brand when I give them space and my platform. So I've said no to most sponsorship opportunities because I don't endorse the product or the company.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot to be said about leaving money on the table as a way to earn trust with people. To say, like, I could be making more money, but I'm not, because I don't think it is in your interests.
Yeah. I think a lot, and the hard part too, I think, is a lot of this stuff goes unseen, like you say no to something, you say no to an opportunity, and you have this inbuilt audience, but a lot of times they're not seeing what goes on behind the scenes in terms of your own decisions. So I think the clarity around this habit that you build, and something that one of my North Stars and core values is being transparent, being consistent as well. How deliberate in the beginning were you about sharing everything with the intent of gaining trust? Because I think something I really wanted to ask, and the reason I asked that is I think the awareness around the actions that it takes to gain trust might start to manipulate. It might could be construed as manipulation. I think there's a line there. And I think as you dive further into this, and like as I continue to read your thoughts and your warnings about it, I feel like the awareness around the actions that it takes to gain trust, the consistency, the four pillars that you mentioned, I think it becomes when you put the cart in front of the horse, like I'm trying to be a trustworthy person, um, it kind of muddies up the incentives a little bit. So have you ever thought about the idea of manipulation and where you draw that line between trust there?
Lately, yes. In the beginning, definitely not. And the interesting thing about transparency as a strategy,
Mhm,
there's a great author named Rachel Botsman that
mhm,
also writes about trust, and she has a great perspective on this that I've learned from and I agree with, which is transparency is actually more of like a trust substitute. Transparency helps in the absence of trust. Like, when there is no trust, people want transparency so that they don't need trust to know what you're doing. They just want to, like, know the choices that you're making because they don't trust you, you
right.
know? The challenging thing about transparency, it seems like a great solution to trust problems. But then you basically need like radical transparency, because if you're transparent about some things but not other things, then that creates a new point of like, well, why aren't you being transparent about that? I'm questioning your motives. And radical transparency may not be useful or helpful or kind in some situations. So um, transparency is interesting, because I also saw that as like, well, if I share more about what I'm doing, then people just know. I didn't think about it like explicitly in terms of trust, but it's like then they understand, and they see, like, I guess implicitly maybe I was thinking about it as trust. Like they see what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and that'll be good. But the manipulation question is really interesting. I was rereading recently Robert Greene's book, The 48 Laws of Power,
Oh yeah.
because I don't think I ever finished the book, but I read it when I was younger. I read a lot of it
It's a
when I was
big one.
younger,
Yeah.
and I remember feeling kind of gross about it. And a lot of books in the world of like influence, persuasion, power, like they do feel manipulative.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, before I just continue to like shit on this book, let me read it. And in the beginning of the book, um, I think it's like the first chapter. He's like, beware of people who tell you that they are not playing power games. Beware of people who tell you that they are not being manipulative, because they are lying to you, and they are actually the most powerful and most manipulative,
Yeah.
because they are like playing a game above the game. So I had to kind of wrestle with that, because I'm like, is that what I'm doing? I guess in Robert Greene's words, like, yeah, but I don't feel like I'm being manipulative, because I don't think you can be manipulative in a negative way and in a way that is serving other people's interests
Mhm.
genuinely.
Yeah.
So the core of trust is, am I doing things that when you take a chance and give me this gift of trust, of influence, of control, of power, of authority, when that is given through trust, and I treat it in a way that says, I'm going to make sure you don't regret this, I'm going to make sure you come out better for this, is that manipulation if we both end up happier because of it?
Yeah.
Maybe in like the purest sense, it is, because there was like an element of orchestration and encouragement that I played in that behavior.
Mhm.
But similar to like when some people have a really bad taste about sales, because it's like, this person sold me on this idea and I regretted it. We only hear negative stories about sales. We only complain about sales when it ended in a negative outcome. We're constantly being sold things all the time and not complaining about it and being grateful for it. So that's kind of how I think about it, is like, is it manipulation, or is it somebody kind of leading the the process, the behavior, to the outcome that serves both of us? I don't
Yeah.
know.
I think the genuine belief that the other person has your best interests at heart is so core to like what accelerates that. I think especially in today, like you mentioned, public distrust is like at an all-time high. People are looking for any reason to not purchase, to not trust, to not, take the first step and put themselves out there. Um, your episode with Jordan Harbinger absolutely is one of the foundational, like, changed my life on sales.
Wow.
Like that, I mean, the invisible selling philosophy, his story of, do you mind retelling that story of that he gave on there of the headphones and how good sales you never feel like you got sold to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember it. I think the gist of it is like, he went to a record store or like a music store to pick up something, and in the process, he was working with a great sales rep who helped him get exactly the things that he wanted. And then in the checkout process, the sales rep was like, "Would you also like these headphones?" And it wasn't a pushing of the product. It was just like, "I understand your needs now, and it seems like you might also enjoy this." Um, it's just an offer. A lot of people, they're afraid of sales because they feel like they are exerting some sort of push on this person, and they think of it as like a zero sum, I win, you lose, and that's not good sales. That's the sales that we don't like. It's
Yeah.
the same with with like actively seeking to be trustworthy. It's like, if you're doing that in a way that serves both people's interests, that sounds great. I would wish more people acted that way.
Yeah.
But maybe you've listened to this more recently, and that's not
Yeah, I
exactly the
have.
story.
Yeah, there's recency bias. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm also telling you to retell a story that he told, not you. So, but yeah, you had that. I mean, you teed up like in your invisible selling workshop. You like literally teed that up so perfectly. And what I didn't realize is that that's how I've had any modicum of success in my own business, kind of without realizing that. But just like you're very articulate in how you are able to, which is why I think you're in a good position with this book, is to put like tangible reality to like very abstract things like invisible selling, trust, things that previously are undefined. And also like while you're explaining them, create very good stories that you can kind of use to illustrate those points. It's very hard to do. You do it in your writing a lot too. It's very hard to do. Um, so giving you your flowers there.
Well, thank you. I mean, I love messaging. I love positioning. I love branding. I love thinking about names of things.
Yeah.
And that's actually the biggest challenge with the book right now is um, we judge books by their covers.
Yeah.
We judge books by their titles. And I think spending as much time as I have in content and on YouTube specifically and thinking about the concept of packaging,
Mhm.
books have so many surfaces that can be packaged. Packaged meaning you packaging of anything is basically like the first thing you see that gives you information to decide, do I want to engage with this more? So like YouTube, it's title, thumbnail, the idea. In an email, it's the subject line. In short form video, it's like the opening image, like the visual hook and the literal hook. These are packaging decisions. Books have packaging decisions. The cover is a packaging decision. The chapter name's a packaging decision. Table of contents is a packaging decision. The design of graphics that can be photographed, the way that you lay out the page. Like there are so many packaging decisions in a book that most authors just don't have like the eye or the experience to think about.
Mhm.
So I'm just like
Mhm.
toiling over this, like
Yeah.
obsessing over these things. And it's really hard because it's I'm never gonna like run the counterfactual to know, did I make the right choice?
Yeah.
I'm great at justifying or talking myself into like any idea being a good idea if I like it enough. So it's hard.
Yeah. No, I
But it's
understand.
fun.
That's the visionary part of why. And I've had mentors that are trying to help make me more self-aware on this as well. Like that's the visionary part of what makes you great. So like, especially with a big project like this, like, I mean, take it from the source, take it from where you're coming from. But I really encourage you to view a big creative undertaking as something where you give yourself permission to not just enjoy it, but also be very stringent on quality. Like, because especially so much in content, like the game is just such a hamster wheel. You're always showing up. You have to reach deadlines, and I know there might be an element of that with working with a publisher or anything like that. But I really encourage you to double down on quality and trust your instincts when it comes to writing about a topic like this because um, I think you've waited. You haven't written a book yet. I mean, you've been publishing a newsletter for how many years?
8.
So that's something I did want to ask you about too, is how much, as you approach a big creative process too, like how much of it do you think will be net new ideas and things you're learning versus revisiting? This is kind of one of the things you asked James about when you interviewed him, but what's your sort of stitching together of um, things that you've already written about? Because you have like this huge backlog of really good, essays, newsletters, content and like you're going to be learning a lot with net new ideas. So how are you thinking about piecing those together as you do this?
Unfortunately, I think at least 75% of this, but probably more like 90% of this is net new,
New, yeah.
which is the challenge, but also what makes it fun and also why I think I have a chance for the existing readers to want to purchase it. A friend of mine published a book 2-ish years ago, and I read some of the Amazon reviews of their book, and a lot of them were like, "This is great, but I've already heard this from them because I've been reading the newsletter, I've been listening to the podcast, and they were less than 5-star reviews." And I just thought to myself, "Man, that sucks." Like you make good content, but you've already shared it. So putting it in this format leads to
Yeah.
worse reviews. Like that's a bummer. So I'm kind of trying to avoid that, which creates new work, but I don't know. It's like 90% net new now, but I will definitely be testing those ideas as I write them.
Mhm.
So whereas like a certain chapter may not be written right now for the book and it's net new content, as I write it, I'm probably going to share at least parts of that as a newsletter or as some form of content just to check like am I describing this in a way that people are grasping and understanding? Because that's a strength and kind of a weapon I can yield
Yeah.
in making sure this book works because ultimately you want people to read the book and be like, this hits.
Mhm.
I feel this. And if I can test that before I put it into this like permanent format that goes out and I can't edit afterwards,
Yeah.
I'm going to do that.
Yeah. I think it'll also be good for just the like your mentals throughout the process. Like I know you talked to James a lot about like the creative cave of a huge creative undertaking like that
Mhm.
and how he came from writing a newsletter, bi-weekly, twice a week. And it was so much easier for him to get like instant feedback and closing that feedback loop to then such a big project where you would go in and work on it for 8 hours a day. And then you feel like just as lost as you were when you started the day. Like as a doing web dev project, you have like such a huge multi-month process, and it's not to the same extreme, but you really have to like find those small wins and like share, and that's what you know content can be. Is you can have micro wins within the process to see like, okay, I think you call it signals of progress. Like,
Yeah.
am I on the right path with
Yeah.
this? Um, so yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing some of that in your content as you roll out too.
This is kind of a magical time because, well, one, I have a developmental editor that's helping me in the
Mhm.
proposal process, and so we have a Slack channel. And when I get excited about an idea, I send it to her because I want that like immediate hit of like, do you have a positive reaction?
Yeah.
But also, I have a project in ChatGPT where I've like prompted it to think as an editor for a traditional publisher,
Mhm.
and as I'm thinking through ideas, like I'm putting ideas in there, and it's not like it doesn't have the final word, but if I have a title idea, I now have a rubric of the criteria that are important to me for the title. And so I put an idea in there. I'm like, okay, grade this. And then I can at least compare its grade to that title from other titles that I've already talked to it about
Mhm.
and see its perception of how this ranks up. Now, every time I ask ChatGPT, like, is this a good idea? I also have to say, okay, now steelman this. Like, what is the counter argument?
Yeah.
And if its counter argument is stronger than its positive argument, then I take that and say, okay, maybe this isn't that great of an idea because any LLM right now is biased to try to make you happy.
100%.
And so it's like, okay, I'll take the immediate hit of like, oh, you think it's a good idea, Chad? And then see like, okay, but if it was a bad idea, why would it be a bad idea?
Yeah.
And see how strong that case is. And when the steelman case against it is not very good, then I feel good.
Yeah. I think that might be a bit good springboard to talk about how you're using it, maybe AI in the book process. You have a really good essay about how you never want to use it for things that you want to get better at, things you want to learn. I think there could be a really good use case for someone maybe uniquely positioned like you who has a lot of existing stuff to either wade through it and like create connecting points between it could be useful for that. But how are you thinking about it as you're revisiting some of your past work and taking on a bigger project to where is it going to be used at all? I think it's really good for research, as you mentioned too. But where are your thoughts at with AI when you approach a big project like this?
For this project, it is a lot of this like steel manning of ideas. It's a
Mhm.
lot of, hey, I just had this like line that came to me that I feel really good about. Is this argument sound? And usually be like, yeah, it's a great argument. And I'll say, okay, but if it wasn't, like, what is the case against this? It's a lot of that because I feel like the scariest thing about writing a book is the permanence of it.
Mm.
And so
Yeah.
at the same time, like part of this is I'm coming up with my own description and definition of what is trust,
Mhm.
you know? And so my first pass at this, I did a lot of reading and I pulled on definitions that other people have shared. And I looked at like dictionary definitions and I'm thinking like, okay, what are the commonalities across these? And so I was basically like bouncing back and forth with chat, like, what are the common elements that make sure trust is present?
Mhm.
And we did that, and then I like worked. I'm like, okay, what is the most concise way that I can pull these elements into a definition? And we did that, and it's like airtight. It's true, it's accurate, but it's not that interesting or memorable.
Right.
So now, what I've been doing more recently is saying, like, okay, all this aside, if I was just sitting across from Andy at a coffee table, like, how would I describe what trust is? And then I'm going to take that to chat and say, listen, I don't necessarily need this to be completely airtight. I'm looking for something that is memorable and quotable and more practical. How does this stand up from a perspective of how airtight or not airtight is it? Like, what's the case against? Because when you put something into a book, it's like fairly permanent, and there's always going to be whatabouters. People are like, well, yeah, but what about this?
Yeah.
Well, what about this situation? And it's like so annoying. But you see it in the Amazon reviews, you see it in the Goodreads reviews. And so if I'm going to have whataboutism,
Mhm.
I want to be aware of it, and I want to plan for it and accept it ahead of time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't want to be surprised by a whataboutism that is valid and good, and I would have altered my writing because of it. So it's a lot of taking the ideas that I have and I'm excited about and saying, okay, what is the case against this? And do I believe that? Do I care about that? And how can I adjust this to incorporate that?
Mhm.
I don't have it do any of the writing. In the proposal itself, I had it do like, hey, here's my overview. And it was like 800 words or something. It's a little bit too long. And I was like, okay, can you help me tighten this up? Because I have a sense that there's a little bit of redundancy here. And I just want the forward momentum to work better.
Mhm.
And then I'll always add things that's like, um, don't add any additional words. And if you do, bold them so I can see what you have added.
Okay.
I'm just looking for subtraction.
Yeah.
And uh, every time it does that, it strips all personality.
Mhm.
And and you see it. I use Grammarly as a plugin,
Yeah. Me
and I
too.
have for a long time. But the better AI gets, the more Grammarly is like, you should write this sentence this way, and
Yeah.
it takes everything to an average of here's how most people sound when they're grammatically correct, and it takes out all personality. So I've actually been turning off Grammarly a lot lately, and when I do this, like revising to cut in chat, I will pull up the two documents, like the two versions of it side by side, and see what was changed, and do I really want that to be changed? Because what it's really good at is sequencing, but it also just strips out personality. So often I'll be like, okay, I like this the way you like rearrange this to change the sequence of this information, but I'm going to keep my voice in there.
Yeah. I think that's really hard to do, especially I know like maybe not for you, but the temptation when you have like such a big scope of project to do, how tempting it can be to rely on those more. Maybe. Um, do you use Whisperflow for
No, I've
any
heard a lot about
dictation?
this, but I recently installed a tool called Monologue by
Yeah.
Every, which seems to be the same value proposition. So I'm
Yeah.
familiar now, and I understand more like the value of that. But even when I do that, the formatting
Yes.
is not my formatting. And so I end up having to go in and change the form, like punctuation. I use a ton of M dashes,
Mhm.
always have. But I don't use like the technically correct M dash, is what I've come to find out. Like I use when you do hyphen hyphen, it like automatically pulls it together
Yeah.
as a longer hyphen. That's the M dash I use. It's like space, long hyphen, space.
Mhm.
And when you get an M dash from chat or whatever, it's like it's like extra long
Right.
hyphen,
You
and the
can.
words are completely connected. Anyway, so anytime I use like these voice to text transcript tools, it uses fewer exclamation points than I typically use
Yeah.
and way more of that type of M dash. So I end up having to go back and reformat anyway.
Yeah. That's interesting. I was interested to hear like some of your tools around writing because I know it's not something you're good at, but it's something that you've been doing for a long
Yeah.
time.
A lot of people tell me that their process is like they just talk it out and then edit what they spoke. And that is just not how I do it.
Yeah.
I just can't do it that way. I don't know why, but there's something about like when I'm typing, it's my subconscious entering my arms, exiting my fingers, and going onto the page.
Mhm.
And I just can't access that same part of my brain by speech.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
You've talked a lot about like morning pages and how like stream of consciousness writing is that. You think
Yeah.
it comes from that at all? Like getting words out
Yeah,
physically?
maybe it's like a practiced limitation.
Mhm.
I don't know, but like it always just comes out differently when I just start typing.
Yeah.
I can't just start speaking. I don't know why, but it just doesn't work for me.
Interesting. Cool. Have you ever heard the story of the fox and the scorpion?
No, tell me.
I'm gonna read this to you because you're right. As I was researching for this interview, I was looking for like fables and stories of trust that you probably have come across, and there aren't a lot that really illustrate it to the point that I find like satisfying as a reader. But I found a good one that I would like your take on and
Sure.
kind of I've adhered in the thrones of research because I think we communicate well through stories. So I'm gonna read this from my copy of Creator HQ here. Um, but okay, yeah. So I don't have attribution on this. Like I can link it in the show notes or whatever. But it's called The Fox and the Scorpion. And it reads like this. So the fox and the scorpion had known each other for some time. They weren't close friends, but enough time had passed between them that there was a certain level of trust. One day they came to a river and they both needed to cross. The scorpion said to the fox, "Will you carry me across on your back?" The fox hesitated, but recognized their dilemma and remembered their history and agreed to do so. Midway across, the scorpion struck the fox, sinking its stinger into the fox. As the venom spread through the fox and their bodies began to flail in the water, the fox cried to the scorpion, "I trusted you. Now we'll both drown. Why have you betrayed me?" The scorpion, between gulps of water, only said, "Because it's in my nature." And with that, they both sank beneath the water and died. I think the reason I resonated with that one out of, the couple that I read is because I feel like we have this innate like inclination to not trust someone until the very last moment. And it's like almost in our nature, even with the best intentions sometimes, to not do so. Um, when you hear a story like that, what comes to your mind in terms of what you're currently researching and thinking about?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's hard to fight nature. Um, but to my understanding, human nature is more default to trust than not. Now, I've changed my mind on this because my hypothesis was there are two types of people: people who trust by default and people who are skeptical by default. And you have like the I trust until you show me a reason not to, and the I don't trust you until you prove that you can be trusted. And I think we see that personality trait in people, but that's like the visible version of this. Whereas most of the time, we are trusting people implicitly. Like you went and bought this coffee and you trusted that it would not be poisoned. You drove on the road today on the right side and trusted that the people on the other side of the lane wouldn't crash into you.
Hmm.
Like there are just, there are so many decisions that we make that implicitly require trust that we just have. And I think that is like 90% of what we do. I mean, Daniel Kahneman in Thinking Fast and Slow, he talks about system one thinking and system two thinking. And system one thinking is efficient and it's automatic. And so what I think has happened is the reason we have trust decline is because we have more shock into system two thinking than we used to. There are just more reasons and red flags and signals that we see that make us consciously ask, do I trust this person? Do I trust this situation? Do I trust myself? Than ever before. But I still think it's actually a minority of our decisions. It's just like when you are making conscious trust decisions, uh, how do you weigh that? So anyway, in this story, it sounds like Fox was making a conscious trust decision, and Scorpion was mostly acting from his nature. He wasn't like thinking like, should I shock this? It was like, oops, I forgot that I shouldn't do it in this situation. Um, I do think that there are people who have become more skeptical by default in conscious decision making situations, but I don't think. I think most of us still live in system one thinking, and like just historically, trusting other people has proven to be more efficient and more effective most of the time. It's just a law of averages thing. It's like, if I trust 100% of the time, most of the time, that doesn't bite me in the ass.
Mhm.
And if most of the time it doesn't bite me in the ass and I'm spending no time thinking about trust decisions, then that usually works. But I think the stakes are higher now in a lot of situations where we have to take more decisions in the moment and think like, should I do this or not? And I think another thing is choice. We just have more choice than ever. We have like infinite choice all the time. And because we also know that any one of our choices can be met with global scrutiny,
Mhm.
like we are more likely to not choose and just stick with the status quo than ever before. And that is a system two decision.
Mhm.
Am I going to make this choice or not? So I think people are just less likely to take action, to choose than ever before. And that requires more trust in the person, in the process, in the company, in the whatever that you're choosing to follow.
How much of this, and this will be sort of my last little zooming in, have you thought about like how the intangibles play a role in it? And I'll give you an example. So I think people who are inherently, aside from like the concrete actions that you've defined when it comes to trust, like the four pillars, I mean, some of the other things you mentioned, those isolated from those things, they have like these soft skills or the way they present their action, the way they present themselves that then either accelerate that or make it more effective. So for example, I feel like if someone is articulate, if they are well spoken, if they maybe even are attractive physically, then I think there's been studies on like the attraction and how that actually forces people to maybe not trust more, but let their guard down a little bit. Are you thinking at all about like how maybe some soft skills, like, how people present themselves, maybe the way they dress, how they speak, maybe even gender, like some of these things that are less, maybe trainable and controllable, but aren't as, step by step or routinized, or less on the philosophical side. Have you thought about that at all?
There's a lot there. I mean, there is like the famous historic example of in the Nixon Kennedy
Mhm.
debate,
Yeah.
because that was televised, suddenly tides swung towards Kennedy because he was more attractive. He presented better on television. But presentation itself is also a signal that I would tie to a lot, usually to these four traits that I said. Like the way you're presenting yourself, does that make me feel like you are competent? Does it make me feel like you are reliable? Does it make me feel like you have high integrity? Like we're looking for signals of like, are your eyes looking around when you say things? Are you slouched? Are you speaking confidently? Um, Confidence speaks to competency. So like it's these layerings that I think most of the time go up to one of those traits. But what I'm focused on are the controllables. It is like how how can you act in such a way where just in the way that you are acting and the choices you make, you are sending these subtle signals to reinforce that you can be trusted. Um, it's simple things. There's a study that I love that they studied kids in, I think it was middle school, and they gave them one of two tasks they could do. What they found, the correlation was the kids that were most liked, the kids that people said, I like this student, they were the kids who showed more liking towards other students.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like the conclusion we draw is we like people who like us.
Hmm.
And the same is true of trust. Like if you step forward and you give trust, you are then more likely to receive trust because trust and vulnerability are incredibly intertwined. So when you take a risk and you share something, even just like a small personal thing, not even has doesn't have to be that personal. It could be like, I like watching football on Sundays. That is something where I'm saying, do you accept that? And are you going to see me and witness me and feel good about that? And do you reciprocate? Um, Normally we start off with these like pretty surface level things. There's this visual model called an onion model. And so when it comes to self-disclosure, when it comes to disclosing of information, we disclose it like an onion, layer by layer, and it gets deeper and deeper. And as you disclose information that's more core to who you are and more personal, then trust gets deeper if the other person receives it, respects it, reciprocates. So we often start with the sharing of like very surface level information, and then preferences, and then beliefs, and then like beliefs about ourselves.
Mhm.
And the deeper we go down that route, the more other people tend to share, or they stop, and then we stop sharing with them, and then trust doesn't get any deeper.
Yeah.
So um, I forget how I got on this, but what I'm focused most on is like, what are the behaviors we can control
Mhm.
to send these signals that, hey, I trust you. Do you trust me? You can trust me. You can count on me. And again, they're all aligned to these different traits. Like sometimes you want to send a signal that you are competent. Other times you want to send a signal that you are empathetic.
Mhm.
And they're situationally dependent. They're all distinct skills that you can build. And there is a lot about just subtle signals.
Mhm. Yeah, I think something you said before too is give where it hurts, and that resonates with me so hard, especially with content where everyone wants the hand raising from their audience. Everyone wants the recognition for the work that they did. When you realize, I spend a lot of time primarily on LinkedIn, and that's the platform is very known for if you engage with other people, then you could make a content strategy that's just based around that, right? I think that aphorism of give where it hurts, like see where other people are and recognize it. That if you want to earn something, want to receive the outcome of trust, you have to first give it first. It's a vulnerable position. Um, but man, I hope First of all, I want to thank you like for everything. It's a good place to land a plane. I think I could talk to you like seriously all day about this. And as I was researching for this and preparing, like I have listened to more of your stuff than I think a lot of people that have interviewed you have. So I hope I've given you today like maybe some different ideas on what you're currently researching and approaching it from a few different angles. Um, One last thing I do want to ask you, Jay, if that's okay, is when you interviewed James, you talked about like what is the before and after moment, especially when at a bigger creative project. When you're thinking with your audience, I think you know your audience more than a lot of other creators, a lot of people in the space. When you think about a before and after moment when it comes to a project like this, what does that look like to you when it comes to talking about trust?
I hope the before and after moment, and the before and after moment, as James described, is like, can you create something so good that people literally remember how their life changed because there was a before and now there's after that thing that you made? And I hope the before and after moment with this is like most people go about their days feeling unseen, unheard, unimportant, like still working their butt off, still like trying really hard, but ultimately I think feeling unappreciated. And to me, I think a lot of that is solved by earning the trust of the people around you. And I hope this gives people the tools and the skills to do that so that they no longer feel unseen, unheard, unimportant. They feel like when they speak up, it is heard and listened to, followed. They want to have agency and authority, a level of control. But a lot of people just they don't have that. They feel powerless. And I think a lot of this is because of the trust blind spot that people have. Again, 75% of people think they're more trustworthy than average. And I know that's not true mathematically. And I think people are feeling the consequences of that in their day to day, but they don't know that that's the problem.
Yeah, love that, man. Um, yeah, huge thank you to you, man. This has
Yeah.
been highlighting my day, and your time is very valued. So we'll have to get you back to the dad studio as soon as we can.
All good.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on, man.
Appreciate you.
Great chat.
Thanks for the coffee.
Yeah, absolutely.